Hello, everyone. Jonathan Alexander here with the Los Angeles Review of Books. And I am very, very pleased today to have with me Daniel Lupo. Their most recent work is the translation of French author Hervé Guibert's Arthur's Whims. And I am really excited to be talking about this work. So, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about how you got to translate Guibert's novel, Arthur's Whims. How did this unfold for you?
I had been a fan of Guibert's since I guess around 2014, 2015, when the English translation of Mausoleum of Lovers came out. Like I guess a lot of people in the US first learned of him through that publication.
Right.
And I kind of went down a rabbit hole of his. I had been working as a commercial translator for a big translation company, and I was looking to switch to literary translation. So I was kind of always trying to spot something to try to translate. So I went down a rabbit hole with Guibert and I came to Arthur's Whims. I just stumbled on it and was very, very taken by it, by how totally bizarre it is, and how different it is from a lot of his other work, especially the work that's appeared in English. And yeah, so I inquired to see whether the translation rights were available, and they were. And then I kind of went from there. And I was lucky enough to find Spurl Editions to publish it. I think it's a great fit for them.
Yeah, it's wonderful. An attractive volume too. So I think a lot of people, if they know Guibert's work, they know To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life. And a lot of the work that Guibert wrote after that, which deals primarily with his AIDS diagnosis. A lot of that work has appeared in English, and then Mausoleum of Lovers and other sort of diaristic work. Some of that earlier work, and there's a lot of it, right? There's a lot of early experimental fiction that is not as well known in English because it just hasn't been translated. So Arthur's Whims is a particularly interesting version of that. It's a strange little story, you know, this kind of perverse tale of two young people who have adventures while being in love, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, it's very vague.
Yeah.
We never really know what their relationship is. If they're just friends, if they're more than friends. There seems to be some kind of prohibition of sexual intimacy between them throughout the book. And that's one of the things that drives the narrative, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you make of that, because perhaps people coming to Guibert for the first time will be surprised that this is not a typical American gay story. This is in a very, very different tradition of homoerotic work, and it's one with some dark touches. There are difficulties. Can you speculate at all about what you think, from what you know about Guibert, from what you know about the tradition in which he was writing, the tradition influenced by somebody like Jean Genet? What do you think Guibert was up to in writing this book?
It's very hard to say for sure, because it's a book that kind of contradicts itself over and over again. I will say you could read maybe something biographical into it, with his relationship with Vincent, of Crazy for Vincent fame. I did do some research on his writing of the book and what he was doing in his life when he was writing the book, and this also appears in the afterword to the book. where he started writing the book on a trip with Vincent to Barcelona. And he says that he started writing it on the train, I believe. So it's possible that, so Vincent was a teenager when Guibert met him, and as Crazy for Vincent describes it, he was, crazy for him, but he was this like unattainable figure for him. And so there's something like that with Arthur and Bichon, I think, but it's not totally clear what the age difference between Arthur and Bichon is. So we don't know if that's the reason that their relationship is never taken into a more extreme sexual level, or if it's just something totally inexplicable and just not reducible to biography.
Right.
And I kind of prefer thinking of it that way. I think it's nowadays it's we're very inclined to, especially with novels, to find a lot of like biographical motivations for its writing. And I think that this is a book that kind of resists that. It kind of explodes all of that. And in really wild ways.
Yeah, which is really interesting because in so much of his work, Guibert seems to invite those biographical readings, but it's like he's always in the process, even when he's talking about his most serious embodied confrontations with AIDS. It's almost as though he's constantly turning bits and pieces of biography into fiction. And so his friends and lovers appear throughout his oeuvre. This is a particularly interesting book because it's almost like a perverse children's story, right? It's the two boys who go off on adventures to strange islands and encounter strange characters and animals and things of that nature, with a sort of set of dark undertones and overtones, with a sort of weird sexual gloss that you never know if it's this fully consummated love affair or whatnot. Obviously there's sexual activity, but it's not in any pat normalized way. And in that way, it seems to me to partake of a kind of, I don't want to say polymorphous perversity, but there is a sort of hearkening back to boys' rough and tumble play, and it's always a little edgy, but also a little erotic at times. It could veer into the erotic. I don't know. That's part of the energy that I sometimes get from this book, but also with maybe a little foreshadowing of darker, more adult themes coming along. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, he writes in the afterword that he would only have to remove like 10 pages for it to be an actual, sellable children's book, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's love and death and the macabre is, a recurring theme of his throughout his work, and it's definitely present in Arthur's Whims, and it, of course, becomes even more palpable after the AIDS diagnosis and in his later work. So on the one hand, it does like Arthur's Whims does seem very different from a lot of the rest of his work, but it's still in the continuation of themes, I think.
I was interested when you said that he began writing it while traveling. A lot of his, I think, most interesting books are written with travel as the background, either writing them while he's away, writing them while he's en route somewhere else, or not in France, or the books themselves are about travel. My favorite is The Man in the Red Hat, which is an extraordinary book.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to ask you, Guibert's sentences are sometimes as twisty as his plots. What were some of the challenges of actually working with a writer whose sentences sometimes veer in very unexpected ways.
Mm. Yeah, he's a fan of, I think it's called parataxis, when you just string like independent clauses together with commas. So there would be very long passages of just one independent clause after another, and it would be hard to determine sometimes where one thought ended and the other began. And French is a lot more forgiving with that than English is. So it was a lot of the troubles I had to do with punctuation, actually, and like how to, keep the flow of the narrative, but still have it make sense to an English reader and not be too. I didn't want to impose too many periods onto the text, but I had to make decisions about that here and there. But yeah, it required a lot of like reading and rereading, and
I love it. It is a wonderful translation. I've just so enjoyed spending time with it. Is there a particular writer beyond Guibert that you're interested in translating next, or someone else you could recommend to listeners as maybe a figure we should be paying more attention to?
I recently got into this poet, Joyce Mansour, who was an Egyptian French surrealist poet. And she's been translated into English, but I think she's not as well known as the other famous surrealists.
Yeah.
And yeah, she writes really macabre, erotic poetry. So I would definitely recommend her.
Excellent.
And last name is Mansour.
And someone you're thinking about translating as well, or?
Maybe, yeah. I'm more like just kind of enjoying reading her right now.
Fair enough. I've been talking with Daniel Lupo. Their translation of Arthur's Whims is available in Spurl Editions. Daniel, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much.